Well, hello there, I'm Détroit. No intro today, I don't feel like it. It's time to open up Photoshop and color in a sketch I did on my own recently. I am trying to get better at coloring and lighting pieces, at the same time giving a more painterly feel to it. This is a dismembered puppet, thrown out. Maybe the point of view from the scene is from within trash or something. That's what I thought of anyway. If you have a better idea about the context, tell me in the comments. And while you're down there, consider subscribing. That's the big red button. You know, that one. During the sketching part, I tried to pay attention to the proportions of the puppet, which is easier to do when the parts are not attached to one another. They are really simplified into like cylinders, for example. On the other hand, I didn't want to be too precious with it because it's going to be painted, and I hope the light of the piece will make some parts blend in with the background. By the way, the large thing on top is the wooden cross that you use to manipulate the puppet. It was thrown out in the same trash right after it got discarded. It's partially hidden and a bit foreshortened because it's so big. To paint, I am using only one brush. It's crazy the marvels you can achieve with only one brush in Photoshop. The more I learn to use the program and the more I learn about art in general, the more I understand that technique and skills are more important by far than the brushes you can use. This one is soft and easy to manipulate. I turn the pressure of the pen to coincide with the opacity of the brush strokes as well as the flux. To be honest, I don't really understand what the flux means, but overall the combination of the two is nice and soft, and it makes it really easy to adjust the color touches you add. I also disabled the link between the pressure of the pen and the size of the brush. That's something I don't do often, and I'm now pretty good at knowing the size of the brush from the pressure I'm applying. But that, with all the other pressure things, is just too much for me. For the entirety of this drawing process, I almost never zoom in. With this style, you don't need details. The borders of the shapes do not need to be well defined for it to be read properly. Zooming in and detailing it doesn't really bring any value to the piece. The color scheme I'm going for is a combination of orange and blue. I simply love it. My logo animation in the intro has that color combination, and many of my drawings do. Blue is cold and orange is warm. They are complementary and both of them are natural colors. When night falls, for example, the light becomes orange and the sky is dark blue. It just works well. The background will be in blue, dark and cold, while the puppet is wooden colored, so a desaturated orange. The light mainly comes from above, which is where I assume the opening of the trash can is, and this light is warmer, making for strong highlights on the polished wooden door. If you're going for this type of digital paintings, your best friend, just like mine today, will be the color picker tool. At first I put down a few original tones, grayish orange for the body, orange highlights, grey yellow for the cross, and light blue and dark blue for the background. After that, I basically only use the color picker to select a tone from somewhere and apply it. Because the opacity isn't 100% all the time, you can make nice adjusted gradients by selecting the color from pixels in between two tones, then painting between them, and doing it all over again until the transition is smooth. Painting this piece, I also tried my best to keep in mind the different planes of the scene. Let me explain. You can simplify a 3D shape by the different planes it has. The most obvious example is a cube. Each face of the cube is a plane, and you need to shade it accordingly depending on where the light source comes from. The more the plane faces away from the light, the darker it will be. In my case, I am looking at the geometric 3D shapes that make the background. Under the cross, there's what could be a trash bag, and the plane of the bag that faces up the most is lighter than the others. On the puppet, you can see it on the torso. The side of the torso runs almost parallel to the light, which means it won't see much of it, whereas the front part of the torso faces the light straight ahead, and so it is where the larger highlights will be. After you have your different planes shaded accordingly, or at least they look coherent with where your light is, now you can move on to the shadows from where the light is blocked. The most obvious example is under the puppet's legs. The ground below will be darker, and a good rule with natural lighting is that the more space you have between an object and the plane on which the shadow is, the more diffuse the shadow will be. You can do this experiment yourself to understand how it works. Turn on a single light in your room, or your phone flashlight for example, and put your hand like 10 centimeters in front of it and far away from a wall. For you Americans who don't use centimeters, that's about 2 McDonald's fries. Now look at the shadow on the wall. The borders are diffused and blurry. Now, put your hand really close to the wall and far from the light. The shadow is crisp and well defined. Here, it's the same. The cross is hanging kind of far from the trash bags and the puppet, so the influence of the shadow will be a lot less. In fact, I'm not even considering its shadow, except at the base of the cross, where it's slanted and really close to the bags. What else is there to say? For the audio commentary of this drawing process, I'm trying to organize my thoughts and make a coherent tutorial, but in reality I kinda did all of what I said at the same time. You know, just following what feels right. I don't know if it's because the color combination was really pleasing or if the image of the piece was really vivid in my mind, but this painting was very simple and efficient for me. I expected it to take at least an hour and a half, but in reality this took me only 35 minutes. The sketch took even longer than the render, but I didn't film that, I'm sorry. I hope you learned something from this process of painting a scene. Even if you already knew all these digital painting tips, I hope you had a nice relaxing time with me today. You can find all of my art on Instagram at d3_sd, and you can come chat with me on Twitter at d3. Subscribe to see more art content every week, and I don't know, tell your friends about me. I'm d3 and it was a pleasure to see you. Bye!